It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. Welcome, welcome. We got another great show lined up here for you today. Today's topic of the week is going to be artificial turf or fake grass, or we used to call it AstroTurf, all kinds of fun names for it. But the bottom line is it is artificial. It looks like grass, feels like grass, and, you know, there's a lot of benefits to it. So I wanted to go over that in the show today and talk about, is there water savings associated with the artificial turf? What about dogs? How do they get along with it? Kids and sports, and what can be the negatives? Does it get hot? Does it look fake? What are the odors associated with artificial turf? How much money does it cost to put in? These types of things. And then I want to go over the artificial installation part of it. No, the installation process, what's required, how to put it in yourself, what to look for if you're hiring it out and having a contractor install it. And so we're going to go over all those things and kind of get a taste of what's going on in the world of fake grass. So let's get right into it and talk about the benefits of artificial turf. I think the number one most obvious, glaring thing is that you're going to save a ton of water. The water savings alone, it really could be enough of a reason to install it. If you have a large lawn area, there's lots of things you can do with existing lawns if you want to get the water usage down on those. And we've helped a lot of clients with that over the years through different types of nozzles, shrinking the areas, putting islands in the middle of big lawn areas just to get the size and the square footage of the lawn down, get the gallons per minute down, and really battle it that way. But if you've had enough and you've dealt with this drought and you've turned your sprinklers off, or the lawn's just dead, or you want, it just looks beyond repair, and realistically, under the best of circumstances, with all the water in the world and fertilizer and everything, sod lawns only last so long. Unless you're thatching them and rototilling and aerating and putting new seeds down and compost and really kind of regenerating that lawn every couple years, it's only going to last maybe 5 to 7 years. 10 years max, I think you could get out of a lawn, which seems like a decent amount of time for what you're paying for the product, because the sod is, not that expensive to put in itself. It's all the other costs associated with it that makes lawn expensive. So the maintenance of the lawn mowing and, doing all the weed whacking and even the sound, the noise, the costs associated with the water, sprinkler repairs. If you add all those costs into the price of having a sod lawn, all of a sudden that sod, which sounds cheap when you're just pricing the sod itself, it can be more expensive, and you can really start to get a handle on, well, if I pay for having artificial turf put in, is it going to be worth my money? So if you do decide, to go that route, and we're looking at this, the positives and the benefits are exactly that. You no longer have to mow the grass. It doesn't grow. You don't have to run a weed whacker and edging around it. So there's no, and to me, a big part of it is the noise, noise pollution, the sound, the smell. You've got the motors running, and you got the 2-cycle engines and the smoke coming out, and this, and it's every week my neighbor's lawn gets mowed. If I'm sitting there in my office trying to work at my house, I got the window open, I got the fountain going, neighbor behind me, gardener shows up, making a bunch of noise and running around doing his thing. And then my other neighbor, his gardener shows up after that. And then my gardener shows up, and, it's just like all this noise and ruckus and everything. And we're all paying this gardener to come every week to mow the grass, so there's a lot of costs associated with that. I just think if there wasn't a lawn to mow, would he need to be there every week? I don't think so. To just pull some weeds, trim the bushes. You got to use the blower at some point to blow off all the hardscapes and things, but I just think it would be a lot less of the noise and the interruptions for everybody in the neighborhood, but also less frequently. Maybe every 2 weeks he can come. Maybe we can get by once a month, and so by eliminating a lawn to be mowed can significantly decrease the amount of time and money and effort is spent on maintenance of, one aspect of your landscape. And so I think that is a big reason, on top of the savings of the water. Any sprinkler system over time, 2-3 years, you're going to have to do at least 1 or 2 repair jobs on. So you got the cost of sprinkler repairs and the cost associated with any leaks or broken heads and, anything like that. So you've got not only the water that's been wasted and paid for, and then, either you have to go out there and fix it yourself, or the gardener or somebody, irrigation tech, would have to come out. And so there's cost, time, energy, money, all associated with the real lawns of having, living grass that go away when you install artificial turf. So really, that's a huge benefit. And so the other thing is, because if the option is to get rid of the grass, and you have pets, animals, dogs coming to mind, and then, or if you have kids and you actually used the lawn, because I always say, there's still a good case for lawns out there if you're going to use them for sports, playing soccer, or just going out there, or frisbee with the kids, or the dog, running the dog back and forth, or playing catch, or fetch, and all these different activities that we use lawns for. I hate to see that go away just because of the water and the maintenance and the cost and the sprinkler repairs and all these things associated with that go along with that. And that seems to be the price you have to pay to do that. Now, with artificial turf, you can get rid of all those things and still have the same activities and still enjoy your house just as much, and your animals and kids and sports enthusiasts can all do the things that we want to do. And in some cases, it can even be safer. They have rubberized pellets that can go into, the artificial turf, like a sports field, where it will actually help with the impact if the kid were to fall over, or you're playing roughhousing, tackling, you end up falling on the ground. It can be easier on your body. So artificial turf makes a lot of sense, for sports. And you can eliminate all the maintenance aspect without eliminating all the fun stuff and all the logical and real uses that we have for lawn. And so it's kind of really a win-win, situation. So one client's house, I had an appointment to go see their yard. They had gardener had taken out a really big, massive lawn. They let it die. They turned the sprinklers off. Beautiful home. It was up in Black Lake near the golf course in Napomo. And the really wide, long front yard, which is nice. When you see a home with a nice, big, kind of expansive front yard, it has a nice open feel. It's great to walk up. But when you're thinking about how to landscape that, how's this going to look, all the lawn was removed out. They'd let it die, and they had just gotten the sod cutter and taken it all out. And we were going to do a walkway. And this was the reason they called me, to go do the paver walkway up to the front entry, which kind of divided that whole giant, what was all lawn, into 2 different sections. And it took the amount of square foot down a little bit. And she was going to have this plan of planting, just all plants. And it asked me about the option of doing an artificial turf lawn in there, and which I really thought was a great idea, because when you take out an expansive lawn area and you just put a whole bunch of shrubs, different heights and styles and different densities and flowers, and it makes the areas feel a lot smaller, because you're taking up space with the 4 or 5 foot, 6 foot shrubs, and you have to walk around them, or make a pathway to go to the other side, or whatever it is, and it all of a sudden the yard just feels a lot smaller. And I really dislike coming up with landscaping ideas for clients that make their spaces feel small or tight, or any chance of it looking like overgrown or making it unusable, essentially. And so the idea was that we did an area that was a lot smaller than what they had, still incorporating plant material into it and still retaining some low open feel, because that's the lawn. That's one of the greatest things about grass, is that it's really low to the ground and you get that nice dark green color. It's expansive and it just feels open and airy and welcoming. And I think that's a big part of the reason why almost everyone had lawns, there for a while. Every home, you walk up and you get, and if they're really long, like this entry that I was looking at, it has the kind of a fairway, kind of golf course look and feel, which obviously if you ever walked out onto a golf course, it's automatically relaxing and you feel this wide expanse, openness. And there's just nothing like that feeling. So you want to retain that with your landscaping, even if you take your lawn out. And I think that we came up with kind of a solution that addressed both, having plants and trees and shrubs and things introduced in combination with artificial turf to retain that open field, that dark green color. We split the area into 2 areas rather than one big giant area. It now was 2 smaller areas and divided by, a walkway, so that you could park on the street and walk up to the entry without having to walk over to the driveway and walk up. So those were some real creative solutions that we came up with, incorporating artificial turf with the design. And I think it's going to be beautiful. And so it's just one of those things where you don't look at artificial turf as just, taking the grass out and put the exact same space of artificial turf in. You can get more creative than that, and, how you address it. So one thing I do want to talk about, the installation process. What's the best way to put it in, and what to think about when you're designing it in. And also I want to go over, what the negatives of the artificial turf are once they're in, and how nothing zero maintenance, and there are going to be, some negatives as to why you would or wouldn't want to do artificial turf. If you're thinking about putting in a new paver's patio or a paver driveway, call Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. The best paver installer on the Central Coast. Check out their portfolio and customer reviews online. ILoveToComeHome.com. That's Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. And on the web, ILoveToComeHome.com. And we're back. Okay, so now I want to talk about what could go wrong and what are the negatives and why you would not want to do artificial turf. And then we can talk about the whole installation process of how to do that, or how to hire it out and what to look for. So it gets hot. I mean, that's first and foremost. It is plastic. It's sitting out in the hot sun. It's going to matter more if you live where it gets really hot, or it also makes a difference on which side of the house you put it on. So west-facing sides of the property where it gets hot in the afternoon, I know the west side of my house just bakes in the afternoon, and I've got brick on the bottom and a stucco house, and there's really nothing blocking the sun on the west side. So in the late afternoon, it's been a hot day throughout the day. The sun beats down. If I was considering putting artificial turf down in that area where I have actual lawn now, I would think twice, and I have, because I know for a fact that would get very hot and it would be uncomfortable in the afternoon. And that's when we go out and play and kick a soccer ball or throw the ball for the dogs, either on the weekends or if I can get home from work at a decent hour, we can go out there. And the last thing I want is to have a hot artificial turf. So you have to consider that. That is a big negative for me, and something to really consider. South-facing side of the home where it's in full sun all day, it can be uncomfortable throughout the day. Now, I'm not saying you can't cool it down, because all it would really take is to take a hose out there and water it and rinse it off, which is kind of good, get the dust off of it, and that will cool it down. So there is, a solution, but it's a consideration because you may not want to have to do that. I mean, come home, after then it's wet, so I don't know. But east side would be better. North side, no brainer. And I got to tell you, a lot of people have asked me throughout my career for lawn on the north side of the house, and shady areas underneath trees where, you normally can't even get real grass to grow. Artificial turf is perfect for those areas. So the negative becomes a positive when you can now have grass in areas where it was previously no way to grow it. And it brings another thing to mind where I've always told people don't put grass right up to the house, because then you have to put sprinklers right up to the house and have water there near the foundation of the home, or there's no way to water the turf right by the house and not get the house wet. Artificial turf, no problem, because there's no sprinklers. You're not having to worry about having it right up, against the house. And that could be like the north side of a house and right up against it. You always wanted lawn there. Artificial turf would be the way to go. So the hot sides are the worrisome sides, and those can, again, it can be overcome, but it's definitely a consideration. And another thing that I don't like about artificial turf is the seams. And I mean, doing this radio show, I'm not for artificial turf or against it. It's just totally subjective. In some cases, I think it could be a really great idea. Other cases, I think I probably wouldn't do it. So this is just, strictly for information and to help you along in your decision if you're considering putting artificial turf in your yard. So the rolls come in 15 feet. So whenever you're thinking about artificial turf, I want you to think of it in terms of 15 feet. That's how wide the roll is. It's like carpet. So you go to lay carpet out, and if it's narrower than 15 feet, no problem. You cut off the excess, good enough. If it's wider than 15 feet, you have to do what's called a seam. You've got to seam it together, which means two edges of those two pieces of artificial turf need to come together, and they need to be joined. Now, to me, that is one of the biggest issues and the biggest negatives for me is when you go to seam it, you have to roll out this basically gauze-looking kind of tape, and you put this glue down, and the artificial turf has a direction. So you can't just seam it any old way. They have to be seamed where all the blades and both pieces are running the same direction that they would if they were all on the same roll. So you can't flip it around. You can't seam it end to end. It has to be seamed on the side, and both the pieces have to be facing the same directions, because you'll see it. I mean, it looks really bad even if you just turned it around. It just looks like one will look light and one side will look dark. And the bigger issue, even after you get both of them facing the same way, you put the tape down, you put the glue on there, you can watch a couple videos and figure out how to seam it. You can still see that line. And to me, if I'm going to put artificial turf in, I want it to look as real as possible. And if it looks fake, if I can see a seam running down where they, seamed it together and it looks okay, or, I don't know. To me, I don't like it. I can always see it no matter how good you seam it. There's going to be an angle of somewhere where you see that line, and your brain instantly tells you, okay, that's fake grass. I can see where they seamed it together. So my advice is to complete the project, if possible, with no seams, or put the seams somewhere where you're not really going to be looking at it from a main viewing angle. It's so remote or behind something or by a tree or whatever, it doesn't matter, then that's great. But if it's front and center and you're coming home every day, or you're walking down the walkway and you see that seam, it becomes maybe I'm a little OCD on it, but it's like that rock in my shoe when I see that seam, and, it's prevented me. I've talked people out of it. Like, oh my gosh, you're at 17 feet, and you have to have it be 17 feet for whatever reason. I say, let's make it 15 feet with no seam, because that extra 2 feet it's going to make the whole job look fake because you're going to see that seam. So, to me, it's got to look and feel real. If you can avoid seams, again, think in 15-foot increments when you're thinking about putting in. Now, you can go as long as you want, up to 100 feet. The rolls come in 15 by 100, and you can cut it any length. You can get 15 by 5, 15 by 30, 15 by 40, whatever you want. 43, doesn't matter. They can cut it, and it looks great. And, I mean, they've come a long way in the look from what artificial turf used to look like to what it looks like these days. It looks very real, and they have the thatch where it looks, they got the dead kind of brown looking, thatch underneath, which gives it that nicer look, more like real turf. But I will say, when we finish the job and I look back at it, it's so perfect. I almost wish they would have mixed in a couple dry spots or maybe a couple weeds, because it's so perfect that it almost when you see it and compared to all the other lawns in the neighborhood, and that one lawn is just, not a speck of weeds or no uneven pattern from the mower. It still looks a little fake. So I like it better when there's leaves, blown in from the trees on it, when bushes have kind of grown over the edges of it, and it gets a little bit better feel with time, and don't get too manicuring, with it. And the other downside is it still has a sheen, it's kind of shiny. So I've noticed one side seems to be shinier than the other side. So when you're going to face it, because you have an option of direction, find out really look at the grass and see what side is the least shiny, and use that for, angling towards the front of the home or the entry or the driveway or wherever you're going to mostly be viewing that lawn from. And one side will look shinier, and you want to point that away from your house or, towards the backyard or whatever it is, so that you can only see really that there is a good side, so to speak, of the artificial turf. So the shininess can be negative. The hot, can be negative. If you have to seam it, areas over 15 foot can give a negative connotation. So, and then another thing is because it's not being sprinkled, and washed out with water and, mowed and new blades coming up, it can harness odors. It can start to become stale over time, or if you have pets and animals and dogs are using it to do their business, that can be a negative, So there is some water associated with artificial turf, believe it or not, because you should be rinsing it off, washing it, leaching out any odors and smells and things. And they do make deodorizers for artificial turf as well. So you got to know all this stuff going in. If they're selling deodorizers for artificial turf, you can guarantee at some point, you're going to be looking at those products and trying to understand what to do and how to get them in there and how often you've got to do it. Because you want to have a good experience, with your landscape, and you want to be out there and using it. And I hate to see people jump into a project and then find out, oh my gosh, this is totally hot on my feet. I don't want to use it, or it smells and I don't want to, go out there. And so we can prevent all those things just thinking ahead and planning it out. So we've talked about the benefits of the artificial turf, not having to do the maintenance, the mowing, the edging, and all the sounds associated with that, paying the gardener, all this money saved from all the water that's not being used and the precious resource that we have, and still, being able to do those activities of normal family life, of dogs and kids and sports. And then, kind of addressing all the negatives. You've got to weigh those two options and say, okay, is there more benefits to what I'm trying to do, and will this work, or are the negatives kind of outweighing what I'm trying to accomplish? So one of the things that kind of brings us to is the price. What does it cost to get the turf installed? How much would it be if I did it myself? How much does this cost to put in compared to if I were to resod the area or, just go ahead and keep the lawn. And so if you have an existing lawn, that automatically, doesn't cost any money. Just keep what you have other than the ongoing maintenance. So even if you have an existing lawn, you're still paying for the water and the maintenance, the mowing and all that. And by putting in artificial turf, you could calculate how much it would cost to take that lawn out, put artificial turf in, how much money you would save over the years, and that would give you an answer to how long it would take to really get your money back to where you could be possibly saving money by putting in artificial turf. And so I want you to, think about it, because it's not cheap. To do really good artificial turf and to install it correctly, it can get kind of pricey. Now, people ask me, what's the price per square foot? And it's difficult to answer that question because there's so many variables. But what I could say, it would be somewhere between $9 and as high as $15 per square foot. So if you had, 500 square feet, and let's say it's $10 a square foot, you're looking at $5,000. If it's 1,000 square feet, that would be $10,000. It could be as high as $12,000, or maybe give one a job for $9,500 or something like that. So, and I think we all know how to get square feet, just length times width. You can go out and measure your lawn, do a calculation anywhere, because the reason for the variance is each job site's different. What's the access? What's the soil like? Does the soil level need to be brought down? A lot of times the lawns are too high, and you've got to not only take the grass out, you've also got to excavate down the dirt, and you should have a layer of base underneath the artificial turf. And so that soil's got to be removed, or maybe it's already too low and it needs to be brought up. And if it's in the backyard, and so you've just got a lot of variables that can happen with a job. It's tough to bid by square foot pricing, but it should be somewhere in that neighborhood. Now, when you're looking at purchasing the artificial turf itself, it's rated by ounces, how heavy it is, how thick it is, the backing material, how thick it is, how dense, the amount of blades that are in the artificial turf itself, all make it weigh more, or if they use less, it should weigh less. So you want to stay within that 80 ounce to 90 ounce. I think the 90s, anything over 90 ounce is, I think it's per square foot or whatever it is. Those are going to be really good artificial turfs. Anything less than 80 ounces is going to be not good. You don't want to stay away from those. They're not as dense and thick. They look a lot more fake. They're not probably going to last as long, in my opinion, because there could be damage to them over time and things, and you want to have plenty of those blades. You want it to look nice and dense. They also will stand up better. Artificial turf has a tendency to want to lie down, and the less blades it has, the more apt it is to lie down. There's also different types of infill. So when you're thinking about what do I put inside the turf after you've installed it, and you don't want to use just regular plaster sand. It has sharp edges, can damage the turf. So they make special coated and they're colored infill that is what you want to use to install it correctly. So you dig down, you compact the base, and you use a base material. You put the artificial turf down. You pick a 90 ounce, 80 to 90 ounce grade and high grade quality artificial turf product, and then a really good high grade infill. And the only thing left is to tack it down around the outside with the nails or staples. You can pretty much use any one of those, but and you can choose between the rubberized infill or the silica sand infill. They both work, and they also work in conjunction with each other if you want just a little bit of bounce to it and not a lot. So that's kind of the story on artificial turf, and I hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next week right here on Patio Side Chats with Chaparral. If you miss an episode, you can always catch up on our website, ILoveToComeHome.com, and you can check out past radio shows there. We'll see you next week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ILoveToComeHome.com to find out more, or call 805-588 888-888-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chat here on KSMA.